now I've the pleasure to introduce a bit the new study item on media production over 5G NPN systems. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm the rapporteur of this new study item. My name is Thorsten Lohmer. I'm belonging to Ericsson Research. And as said, kind of here, I'm briefly introducing the study, which is just starting. So a bit on the justification, we already heard that there has been lots of work in 3PP in SA1 and partly also in SA2 on media production. Now this is a bit more how media production industry is going to use a 5G system, because SA1 is very much on service requirements, on kind of nice KPI figures and so on. And the idea here is now to break it down into more something specific. What does it more precisely mean, and so on. So what we have seen, what was the trigger for this study item, was that there is in the media production vertical lots of different ways of establishing workflows, and Ian and Lola have already indicated how many different scenarios are there and kind of production tiers are there. And in that sense, it would be interesting to understand more about this. This study item in SA4 was to a certain extent also a trigger for this workshop. So the expectation, or my expectation here, is to get more input from the media production industry on, let's say, what are important features, how to use the system, and so on. Right. So what we know is there is, for instance, from AMWA NMOS, the protocol suit out to configure and control different IP flows between different devices for different scenarios. There's lots of APIs already available, and I think one topic for the study item is to understand, okay, how are these existing workflows and protocols used on top of the 5G system? So how does the 5G system get integrated into such media production networks? Another aspect, 3PPSA4 has a certain history on media protocols. Initially, lots of focus on RTP, RTSP with SIPs, conversational, and so on. Later on with DASH type of streaming, initially it was called adaptive HTTP streaming, and so on. So in that sense, it felt also a bit natural to look into different codecs, protocols, and format aspects to understand, is there a need to standardize anything further? How would the existing protocols and procedures work on top of the 5G system, and so on? And specifically a 5G NPN system, because if you would like to use certain network features like quality of service or cross separation, you need to be kind of sure that you are not bundling stuff together, which should be separated by the network. So when we talk about different cross classes and cross separation, it is certainly important to basically keep the flows separated, which needs to be treated in different cross classes. Of course, in an MBB context and so on, this is probably not necessary. There we see lots of tunneling solution and multiplexing solution. But when you start running in an NPN system, independently, whether it's a PNI NPN or in the standalone NPN, you may want to keep things separated. The study itself, at this stage, it's not really clear whether there is normative gaps. So the study is focused to identify gaps and to understand what in addition needs to be specified in 3PP. Of course, there will be lots of collaboration with other 3PP groups, in particular with SA2 and RAN, in order to basically enable that media producers can use the system. So this is now the objective. The study item description you find under this link. So this is basically the approved study item description. And as indicated, it is to identify the potential needs and the potential standardization needs in addition to what is available. The work should build on top of 22.827, so on the existing BIAPA use case and requirements. The idea is not to come up with new use cases, but to identify some relevance and then to start diving into more details of these relevance. What we have seen, at least in some initial work, is that there is media production devices use different type of streams. Of course, the most obvious one is for a wireless camera. There's an uplink video. But typically there's also return video, tally, prompter, whatsoever. And in that sense, it would be good to study to understand how is the 5G NPN system used, what makes sense to basically separate, and then to also start identify what are potentially relevant cost requirements for these type of workflows. So what is provided in addition to the cost for the uplink video. The other thing is, of course, the 5G is already an extensive toolbox providing lots of tools for different purposes. We already heard about NPNs. In that context, there's also network slicing in. 3PP also offers a certain set of quality of services, and more network event reporting and network assistance is coming up. So in that sense, one objective of this study is to identify which of these 5G system features are relevant, and also how these are going to be used. And as indicated earlier, there is a certain intention to work with existing protocols and organizations. So from the media protocol perspective, there needs to be studied a bit more which of the existing solutions are potentially relevant to run on 5G over a 5G system. Like Ian has said, there is a difference between contribution and production. So in that sense, it would be good to understand which of the existing protocols would work in a 5G NPN system, and would say how would that be working. On 5G, it is very likely that compressed video needs to be done. So also a bit of codec related work is needed. However, likely not kind of detailed codec work, more kind of how to enable, let's say, codec negotiations so that basically devices can support their own set of codecs. And then, of course, there's a huge set of work already ongoing in MY and MOS around what we call network and media orchestration. So basically to configure all the various devices in a media production context. And here, of course, that needs to be somehow fit to a 5G event exposure framework. So basically how to configure, for instance, quality of service, how to receive network events from the system, and so on. So that also needs to be studied. And of course, the idea is not to invent new protocols to create something completely new. The idea is more to work with the existing stuff, for instance, what has been defined already by external groups like from NMOS, from VSF, from the Video Service Forum, and from others. As indicated, the work should focus on standalone NPNs and PNI NPNs. From our understanding, there is, from a workflow perspective, likely lots of similarities in. Of course, in an architectural context, there's lots of differences. But the idea here is to basically focus on all types of NPNs. Yeah. Other important aspect is, of course, time synchronization, device synchronization. This is kind of important. And here, of course, we need to work with other 3PP groups, in particular SA2 and RAN, on, would say, on solutions, also the time-sensitive communication and so on. Right. The study item supporters is listed here. And here, of course, I just want to give a heads up. If you also want to contribute, of course, the study item supporters is needed to kind of kick off a study to show that there is interest. But contributions is not limited to study item supporters. So if additional people want to contribute, yeah, of course, you need to be a 3GPP member. But beside that, feel free. A short glimpse on the timeline and on the current TR. The first SA4 meeting has already, yeah, kind of is already done. So the first version of the TR has been created. It's now TR 26805, which is basically available in its first version, draft version. There is a set of additional SA4 meetings coming up. The last SA4 meeting is supposed to, where the conclusion should be done in February next year. So we have around 4 meetings left in order to basically study the gaps and would say how media production industry plans to use 5G. Between these plenary sessions, there's also a set of conference calls scheduled. So it's always possible to basically progress the work also between the meeting. And of course, now during the COVID times, it's rather easy to attend because all these meetings are electronic meetings. Kind of for the last 2 meetings, it's not yet clear whether they are physical or electronic, but at least the next 2 meetings are at least electronic meetings. Right, and as said, the TR is 26805. I've also put here the, would say, link to the document. The first version is here in the TDoc 678, and you find all versions under this other links. Right, that was what I wanted to present, and now, of course, I'm really looking forward for input and for, would say, yeah, good discussions during the rest of the workshop. Thanks a lot.